Well, hey everybody, Andy Kvernen here with another Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. You may have noticed in today's Bible reading that we come across a pretty relevant topic to our current time and our reading in the newspaper, online, current events. It comes to the nation of Israel. And here in the book of Romans, Paul is writing to the church in Rome, no doubt a mix of Jews and Gentiles there, but certainly in a Gentile context, a Gentile locale, about what it means to have faith in God and about what it means to understand our need for God and God's program to save the world. It's this glorious gospel exposition we read throughout the book of Romans. But here there comes a point when Paul's writing, when he's talking to the Gentiles, and he's saying, look, don't get too haughty about your position. Don't forget the Jews. Remember, the Jews were chosen first. And yes, there is this sort of rebellion amongst the Jews against the gospel. And we're going to talk about that very specifically here at Cornerstone this Sunday and in the coming weeks as we lead towards Easter, is that the Jews, but also all of humanity, rejected Christ and allowed him to go to the cross to die for our sins, although many didn't think that was the reason he went to die. But here Paul's saying, look, don't get too haughty, don't get too arrogant. God actually has a plan for the Jews. And I want to read just a portion of this. In no way will I explain everything about what's to come in the future here, but I want you just to have a little bit of a taste of what Paul is doing in Romans 11 when it comes to God's plan for Israel, for the Jews. And so verse 25 of Romans 11, he says, "Lest you be wise in your own sight, I don't want you to be unaware of this mystery." Now, mystery is not like some thing that cannot be seen or some mysterious thing that's kept under the rug. It's this thing that previously had been hard to understand that is now being revealed. And so Paul says, look, I don't want you to be unaware of what God is doing and what God has revealed about his plan. He says, a partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. What does that mean? Well, it means that Israel, at least in part, has become hardened to the gospel, has become hardened to Jesus. And of course, we see that. We know that that's true. That as a general rule, those who would call themselves Jewish or the nation of Israel has said, no, we reject that Jesus was the Messiah. There's been a hardening of that. But what's the result? Well, the gospel, as we see it in the book of Acts, went from Jerusalem to Judea to Samaria, even to the ends of the earth. The gospel went out to the Gentiles as a result of that partial hardening of Israel. It says, and in this way, all Israel will be saved. Okay, a partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. Okay, until God has reached every Gentile that he wants to reach, there is this partial hardening. But then he goes on, he says, in this way, all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will banish ungodliness from Jacob, and this will be my covenant with them when I take away their sins. What does this mean? Well, though there's a partial hardening now, there'll come a day when the nation of Israel will be saved through the tribulation. I'm convinced that they'll be saved and that they'll be brought out of that tribulation and into a very specific place in the millennial kingdom. God isn't done with the nation of Israel yet. And Paul continues, he says, as regards the gospel, they are currently enemies for your sake. They're enemies of the gospel right now. They've rejected Christ for your sake, for your and my sake, friends, for the Gentiles who are now privy to the gospel because of their rejection of it. But he says, as regards to election, they're beloved for the sake of their forefathers. Make no mistake, God still has a plan for Israel. Why? Because he chose them, and because his promise to Abraham to give them land and seed and blessing is not negated by God's offering of the gospel now to the church. God continues to have a program, a plan for the nation. He says, for the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. God doesn't go back on his promise. When God invited the nation of Israel into this land and seed and promise through Abraham, he doesn't go back on it. He says, for just as you were at one time disobedient to God, but now have received mercy because of their disobedience, so they too have now been disobedient, in order that by the mercy shown to you, they also may now receive mercy. For God has consigned all to disobedience, that he may have mercy on all. Now, there's a lot to understand there, and I'd be lying to you if I said I could just automatically teach for 3 hours on that, and you'd have all this clarity. But here's the big picture. Here's what we need to know. God is busy working out his purposes in the world. And that includes his purposes in the nation of Israel. What's he doing specifically right now in their war with Hamas? I'm not here to tell you. But what I am here to tell you is that God's not done with the nation of Israel. And there's a reason that we ought to have a heart for that place, for Israel, for the Jews, because God has a heart for them. And though they're under a partial hardening, there'll come a day when they will reign with God, I'm convinced, in the land of Israel, in the eschaton, in the millennial kingdom, and in the new heavens and the new earth. And they'll have a specific place as the chosen people of God. Now, will you and I have a place as well? You bet. There's a place for us too. There's fullness for the Gentiles as well as for the Jews. And yet, friends, we ought to be friends to the people of Israel, because God has a heart for them, and he invites us to have a heart for them too. God bless you, friends. I hope that clears a couple things up. No doubt it creates more questions. Let's keep talking, and God bless you, and have a great day. And Lord willing, we'll see you soon on the Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional.